So in this video, I'm going to talk about 3 Arthouse movies that came out within the past couple months, including The Lighthouse, Jojo Rabbit, and Parasite. So let's start off with, admittedly, my least favorite of the 3, but that's still not a bad thing, and that would be The Lighthouse. Written and directed by Robert Eggers, who previously did The Witch, and this film stars Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, as they are lighthouse keepers who are forced to stay at this lighthouse for a short period of time. However, due to their conflicting personalities, they end up just really starting to annoy each other, and there may be other spirits like really working to make sure these two go nuts. So the trailers for this movie were very interesting, and I was really interested in the cinematography of this movie because it was shot in black and white in a different aspect ratio, like it was a film from, the 1900s, which automatically that was interesting. Now, I'm not really a big fan of The Witch. I think it's an alright movie overall, so I think this movie is actually a lot better than The Witch. So the things that really stand out in this movie, obviously the cinematography. The cinematography in this movie is outstanding. It's filmed like a film shot in like the 1920s or something. The aspect ratio is very fascinating, and it's like, that's an interesting stylistic choice that you have there. And I guess I was more interested in that than most of the other movie. Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe are both excellent in this movie. This is some of the best work I've seen Robert Pattinson do, and this is some of the best work I've seen Willem Dafoe do, because they're basically two guys who are basically the complete opposite of each other, and they can get on their nerves so easily by doing either some really big stuff or just doing some very childish things, as you'll see in this movie. The movie is also, it's very disturbing, and I thought that worked for the most part. And I think the thing that I feel most about this movie is that I have a lot of questions about this movie. I don't want to go into spoilers or anything, but I feel like I do want to go back and watch this movie just so I can feel like I can understand it more, like understand the story more. Which, for a movie like this, that's not bad or anything. So overall, I feel like The Lighthouse is a fascinating movie that I feel like needs to require more viewings in order to understand it completely. But, credit to everyone involved, because I would have to watch this again, and I don't mind watching it again. So I will give Lighthouse 3 out of 4 stars. See it. Next up, we have Jojo Rabbit, written and directed by Taika Waititi, and it stars a 12-year-old boy played by Roman Griffin Davis, I think it is. I'll have to check that out. But he's a 12-year-old who's about to join Hitler's army. And he also happens to have an imaginary friend who is also Adolf Hitler, played by Taika Waititi, who's directing the movie. And meanwhile, he finds out his mother, played by Scarlett Johansson, is hiding a Jewish girl in their house. Now, when I first heard the premise of this movie, I'm like, let's see how this movie plays out, I guess. Because, obviously there's a fine line you gotta walk with this movie. Because, you don't want to offend a whole lot of people with this movie whatsoever. And for the most part, it actually walks that line perfectly. Mostly. So, overall, the performances in this movie are spectacular. Scarlett Johansson, who plays Jojo's mom in this movie, she's really good. Thomasin McKenzie, who plays the young Jewish girl in this movie, she's really good. Roman Griffin Davis is really good. Pretty much everyone is really good in this movie, even Taika Waititi as Hitler, because the way they portray him, they make him very childish, which I think it really does work, because that's how I imagine a 12-year-old would imagine him. It's like, hey, I want to be your best friend. Cool, we can do best friend things together. And it's obviously that's not what Hitler was like at all, but that's just kind of in the mind of Jojo himself. I would say for the most part, the comedy and the drama does work, but there are some times where it doesn't. Because sometimes there would be a bunch of comedic scenes, and then it would transition straight to drama. and it would do it without like skipping a beat or anything. I'm like, this is kind of awkward to do. It's like kind of awkward to like go from, you know, something that would be really funny to something that would be really dramatic. Meanwhile, the middle of the movie is mostly dramatic, which I thought was really effective. But the last act is mostly dramatic with some comedy sprinkled in, and I don't know if it really worked out. So I guess Jojo Rabbit is a movie that it's very interesting to watch, and at the same time, it's just kind of hard to place it. It's like, is this really a comedy or is this really a drama? Because like the tonal shifts are just a little bit annoying in this movie. But there are a lot of times when, you know, when the drama works, it hits hard, and when the comedy works, it's really funny. So yeah, it's definitely worth a watch, and if you can get past the idea of the movie more than anything. I would say Jojo Rabbit, I would give it 3 out of 4 stars. See it. Alright, now the last movie is Parasite, directed by Bong Joon-ho, also written by him, as well as Jin Han-won. And it's about this family who admittedly is not really all that wealthy, who end up getting the opportunity of a lifetime, essentially. One of the family members learns that they can work for this very wealthy family, and basically they slowly begin to get involved with their lives a lot. And that's the best way to talk about this movie, because like I do not want to give spoilers for this movie at all. This is a movie that I went in without really knowing much. I heard a lot of buzz for this movie. I'm like, you know, I'll go in and see this movie, see what it's like. I didn't even watch a trailer, didn't even read the premise, and that is the best way to watch this movie, because it was so unpredictable, so good. This movie is everything. This movie is hilarious, it's horrifying, it's heart-pounding, it's shocking, it's everything. The performances across the board are really spectacular. Like, both families, you can actually believe them as families. Like, you can imagine, like I love the dynamics of both the families. Like, the main family, you can tell how close they are, while the rich family, you can tell that they're kind of close, but they're also kind of separated at the same time. Also really liked how it handled, like, the class divide that is obvious in this movie. And yeah, also, I couldn't predict anything that happened in this movie. Like, if you just saw the beginning, it's like, okay, here's what's gonna happen with this movie, and you're like, oh, this is what's gonna happen with the rest of the movie. No, you are not gonna predict anything that happens in this movie. And again, this movie is also surprisingly very funny. Like, I found myself laughing a lot during this movie, more than more than most movies, actually. Because, like, everyone gets a good moment every now and then. Like, again, all the performances are pretty good for them, are spectacular, I would say that. Yeah, it's another movie like The Lighthouse, where it's like, I kind of want to watch this movie again more, just to feel like I can understand it more, just so I can, like, appreciate it more. The design of the house of the rich family is also spectacular. Everything about this movie is very fascinating. I'm trying not to spoil this movie, because I feel like the best way to see this movie is without any spoilers whatsoever. So I will give it my highest grade. Actually, I will give it 4 out of 4 stars. See it. Definitely see it. See all these movies, actually. And some of these movies are so good that I actually had to go to a town hour and a half away to see. That's commitment right there. That really is commitment right there. And it makes up for playing with fire. And yeah. So, what are some of your favorite indie movies? Comment down below. Subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. See you next time.